At the center of Canada's Wonderland, which has the highest attendance out of any seasonal theme park in North America, sits the appropriately named Wonder Mountain. But despite being in such a highly attended park, Wonder is a name fitting for this mountain for a different reason. For this mountain holds secrets, history, and relics of forgotten attractions. With construction of Alpenfury, the new roller coaster which will travel through the mountain, going vertical just recently, I thought this was a more fitting time than ever to explore exactly what secrets this mountain holds, what those secrets can tell us about the park's history, and most importantly, what's guarding those secrets. I'm Alex Crew, and this is Canadian Amusement History. Thunder Run is a powered mine train coaster built by German manufacturer Mack Rides. The history of Thunder Run, the coaster, is a topic that's been covered by a small handful of other creators on this platform already, and to be honest, is a pretty short subject. However, there is one very important footnote that I've seldom heard talked about, and certainly never in depth. We'll get there shortly. But first we have to go back to before the park's opening in 1981, all the way back to the planning stages in 1979. Taft Broadcasting, who already operated Kings Island, Kings Dominion, and Carowinds in the US, constructed the park which was at the time in the middle of the country north of the GTA. Wonder Mountain was always the planned centerpiece of the park. Whereas both Kings Island and Kings Dominion featured observation towers at the center of their parks, Wonderland would instead receive a massive Canadian mountain. This was to better quell public concerns at the time that the park would be a Trojan horse for American corporations coming into Canada. It was inside the mountain that two attractions were originally planned. The first was Wonder Mountain Pathway, a walkway to a massive observation platform located on top of the mountain. This offered 360-degree views of the park on a large flat surface between small rock caves. You entered this attraction on the southwest corner of the mountain next to the washrooms, winding your way up the side of the mountain. The second attraction was to be a Bavarian market located in a large space on the north side of the mountain, as the area Wonder Mountain sits in is known as the International Festival. The space was created inside the mountain, but the Bavarian market was never built due to several budget cuts to the park that axed several attractions, and even the entire land of Frontier Canada that wouldn't be fully realized until 2019. Meanwhile, outside the mountain in the International Festival, an attraction that would be completed for opening day was Blauer Enzian, the original name for the coaster that would eventually become Thunder Run. The coaster is capable of reaching speeds of 64 kilometers an hour, or roughly 40 miles an hour, and only has a height of 10 meters, or roughly 33 feet. This made the coaster a great family coaster for families with children who were too old for the rides in the Happy Land of Hanna-Barbera, but too young to enjoy rides like Dragon's Fire and Minebuster, which were the park's big rides on opening day. Things would remain this way until 1986, when Blauer Enzian would be moved inside the mountain, changing both the mountain and the coaster forever.
Step on board New Thunder Run, at Canada's Wonderland. You go thundering through Wonder Mountains fast as you can. All the way, climbing, twisting, banking, curving the tunnel into the mountain. As light fades away, spiral down, deep inside you emerge again. New Thunder Run.
The coaster was moved into the mountain, in the space originally planned to be the Bavarian market. The coaster now weaves through the mountain, with its first helix winding through the side of the mountain and its second helix located completely inside it. Guests first climb a staircase to an elevated load station to board the coaster.
Can I get a choo-choo?
After blasting out of the load station in a powered acceleration, the track banks into the first helix. This takes you around one of the former waterfalls that used to run off Wonder Mountain, and was actually still operational until Paramount's purchase of the park in 1993. The portion of this helix inside the mountain takes you past flashing lights resembling twinkling crystals, with a fiberglass rock wall separating the area home to the first helix from the area housing the second. The train then passes through a tunnel in the rock wall, entering the room housing helix number 2. This room is almost pitch black, save for the same strobing lights found around the first helix. That is, except for 2 glowing eyes. After the second helix, the train passes through a tunnel of lights and exits the mountain, returning to the load station via a banked turn around another former waterfall. The powered train then speeds through the load station and repeats the circuit again. But the original incarnation of this ride was far more than just that, and featured a lot more than just a pair of glowing eyes. Those two glowing eyes riders zip past in the darkness belong to the main subject of today's video, the mysterious Thunder Run dragon. This dragon has allegedly been given the nickname Herman from park staff. I have no idea how this started or the backstory around the name, but it's apparently been going on for decades. Now, riders who have even noticed the dragon, myself included, formerly believed this dragon was just a dark green fiberglass head with glowing eyes, affixed to a rock pillar in the middle of the coaster's second helix. That is, however, until this image surfaced. He has arms and a torso, holding a large crystal above his head. And not only that, why does this look so different, not from just what riders can see today, but also from a different dragon than either of these that I remembered being there as a kid in the early 2000s? We can find some answers when analyzing this photo, as well as the original version of the ride experience. The uploader apparently found this image from an unknown source after years of searching, adding that this seems to be the original Herman they remember from their childhood. They also imply this is an older image, and that they believe he was replaced sometime in the 2000s with a quote-unquote less horrifying version, placing this image at 2 to 3 decades old. Originally, the train didn't just do 2 laps past the glowing eyes sitting in the darkness. Rather, on the first lap, guests would hear a thundering heartbeat playing during the portion inside the mountain, accompanied by the pair of glowing eyes. This heartbeat sound also played outside the mountain as you approached the ride's queue, and also in the ride's exit tunnel. On the second pass through the mountain, red floodlights would illuminate the dragon, fog would blast, the crystal would glow, and he would let out a fierce roar as the train passed. This also explains the existence of this large speaker we can see in the photo. This is also a good time to mention that as of right now, we have no proof that this original version of Herman wasn't animatronic, as the original uploader of this image, who remembers seeing it, seems to be under the impression that it was. I'm not saying this would have had a large range of motion like the Yeti from Disney's Expedition Everest or anything.
This Yeti is the single biggest dynamic figure that has ever been built.
But it's possible its left arm or mouth had some sort of movement. I find it really unfortunate that this original version of the ride experience is lost to time, as this makes the story of the ride so much more clear. It ties in incredibly well with the mine train theme, with the story of the ride being a crystal mine protected by the dragon, which you would feel the presence of thanks to the heartbeat and glowing eyes on your first pass, then see in full as it reveals itself to you on the second lap, and chases you out of the mountain. It's hard to tell thanks to the lack of lighting in the current version of the ride, but it appears that this is the same Herman that is actually still in the mountain to this day. Slowing down, freezing, and brightening what few ride-through videos online show the dragon, we can clearly see that it is in fact still a full torso and arms. This freeze frame comes from a 2012 video. We can see here that the crystal was actually still lit at the time this video was taken, but it appears to have been lit sporadically over the past several years, with even the eyes too remaining unlit occasionally nowadays. But for more definitive proof, let's look at this 2023 video taken during Winterfest, when the entire ride happened to be running with the lights on. I believe this is the same dragon from the original photo, just from a different angle. Look at the spines on the head, the positioning of the teeth, and the forked tongue. The mouth appears to be open wider than in the photo. However, this could be an illusion due to the angle, or even tie back into the theory of this formerly being animatronic if the park decided to display it with the mouth resting open. It appears at some point it was repainted green, but it's kind of hard to tell in this lighting and due to how dusty it is. So if it's been the same dragon all along, then what is this? This is what I remember from my childhood, and countless other guests remember as well. This is the version of Herman that replaced the original in the early 2000s, and the original uploader of the first image was referring to. This screenshot comes from a 2008 video, and we can see the differences right off the bat. First of all, the head and scales are a totally different shape, and there's a row of teeth along the side of his mouth and white scales on the eyebrows. The spines on the head are also a completely different pattern. The most obvious difference, however, is that this dragon doesn't have light-up eyes. Now you'll notice from this video that when this second version of Herman was in the ride experience was almost identical to the original except for the lack of fog. The first pass would be in the darkness accompanied by the heartbeat, and then the floodlights, crystal, and roar would activate on your second pass through. Now there's several reasons the park could have done this. I believe it's because they wanted to go with a more realistic dragon that was also a bigger reveal on the second pass through the mountain, rather than the eyes being lit on the first pass as well, which alerted riders to his presence. I personally think the eyes peering at you from the darkness on the first pass as well builds more tension, but I can see why the park would want to go for more of an alarming reveal to elicit a stronger guest reaction. This version of the ride with the second Herman is the version I first rode. After not visiting the park for about 10 years, I returned as a teenager in the mid-2010s, and the current version of the ride where the dragon sits in the darkness and is never illuminated had already been implemented by that point. This actually made me mistakenly think for years that my memories of Thunder Run were actually of Dragon Mountain at Marineland, which I would have visited the same year as a child. After growing up and learning that Marineland's Dragon Mountain was planned to have an indoor portion, but it was never completed, which is an entire video on its own, I was confused as to what I was remembering until I learned about the original Thunder Run ride experience with the heartbeat and illuminated dragon. This second version of the dragon with the more realistic head was never animatronic from what I can remember at least, but I would have been roughly 6 years old at the time, so I can't really say for sure. But if the Herman that was there when Thunder Run opened and the Herman that's there today is the same one with a new coat of paint, then why did it leave and return in the 2000s? I believe that due to Herman either being a static statue since day one, or due to him becoming that way due to wear and tear, the park was no longer happy with it from a special effects point of view when compared to how far effects had come by the 2000s in the theme park industry. I believe this is why the original version was replaced with the version with the more realistic head and more shocking reveal. When this too became outdated around 2010 or 2011, I believe they discontinued the heartbeat, roar, and spotlights from the experience. I think the park is choosing to keep Herman mostly in the darkness, except the glow of the crystal on the days when it's even lit, making the prop seem more menacing than it really is to guests who even notice the eyes at all. This also explains why the original Herman head would have returned. I believe with the park now choosing not to illuminate the dragon with floodlights anymore, the original head was brought out of storage and repainted, due to the fact that it has glowing eyes which could be seen in the darkness without illuminating the rest of the prop. This means we can place the original dragon being there from when Thunder Run opened in 1986 until it was replaced with the second version around the turn of the millennium and the fog was shut off. This second version was there until sometime between 2010 and 2011, when the original head returned and the spotlight effect was shut off as well. This gives us a complete timeline. Unless Herman was there before Thunder Run existed at all. Now there's some debate online why and how exactly this photo was taken. As I mentioned, the original uploader found this image from an unknown source and didn't elaborate. Reverse searching the image, the only other result is that it was uploaded to the Wikimedia Commons on June 21st, 2009 by wiki user Chris Crazy. This is the only image they ever uploaded to Wikimedia, and their account was created on the same day this image was posted. So then, who took this photo and when? For that we have to go back to the Wonder Mountain pathway. The pathway was closed in 1986 when Thunder Run moved into the mountain, making it the shortest lived attraction in the park's history, next to the attractions in the Yogi's Woods area of the Happy Land of Hanna-Barbera, which was replaced with the Smurf Forest in 1984. The most common theory is that this was taken before Thunder Run's existence when Wonder Mountain pathway was still open. That would imply that Herman predates Thunder Run and was part of the walkthrough experience. The most often cited reason as to why Wonder Mountain pathway closed when Thunder Run opened was because of mechanical equipment that had been placed in the space originally planned for the Bavarian market, that then had to be moved to public areas on top of the mountain once Thunder Run moved in. Now this makes absolutely no sense for several reasons. The first is that looking at the former lookout platform at the top of Wonder Mountain from above, there seems to be absolutely no displaced mechanical equipment of any sort, only the supports for Vortex, which wouldn't be added until 1991. As we can see from this construction photo, the pumps for the waterfall are all contained in this section on the other side of the wall from the former short path you used to be able to take behind the falls. This path wasn't an attraction or part of Wonder Mountain Pathway, but rather its own experience with the waterfall's pumps located out of public view on the other side of the wall. Additionally, the inside of Wonder Mountain is enormous, large enough that in addition to Thunder Run in 1986, Wonder Mountain's Guardian in 2014, a variety of Halloween haunt mazes over the years, and now Elpin Fury, have all been able to fit in the mountain, as well as extensive storage space on the 3rd floor. And even despite all that, the vast open space in the middle looks like this. Especially back in 1986, before any of those additions, I highly doubt that if any mechanical equipment was displaced from the area which became home to Thunder Run, it would have needed to be relocated to the observation deck on the mountain's roof, rather than any other area in the vast structure. The other reason commonly stated for the pathway's closure is that it was to prevent people from throwing objects onto the tracks or passing trains of Thunder Run below from the mountain's observation deck. This, however, would have only been possible from 2 very distinct corners of the lookout, which easily could have been closed off or had modified fencing installed to prevent this issue. It seems a small price to pay compared to closing an entire attraction, which also happens to be the focal point of your park and requires no operators or mechanical maintenance like a traditional ride. This begs the question as to why Wonder Mountain Pathway was really closed. Could it be that the space Thunder Run occupies was part of the walkthrough attraction? Due to its short lifespan and closing just before quality home recording equipment became widespread like it would in the latter half of the 80s, the Wonder Mountain Pathway has been scarcely documented. This opening year photo clearly shows the walkway winding up the side of the mountain, and this construction photo from a year prior clearly shows the reinforced pathway that would become the attraction, giving an idea of its layout. Kind of. It seems there was possibly an indoor portion of this pathway. It appears like just after the ascent begins, the pathway ducks inside the mountain. There is also some sort of platform here that we can see in both construction photos and photos of the finished park. I've heard it mentioned on forums dating back decades that the walkway had an indoor portion with some sort of scenery. However, there seems to be no documented proof of this. The trail of this pathway seems to back that up, however, and interestingly enough, this is the exact location currently home to the queue, load, and unload station of Wonder Mountain's Guardian, with the ride even leaving the mountain to begin its ascent from the former mystery platform. This provides strong evidence that there was in fact a small indoor portion of the walkway, and that space may have been repurposed as Guardian Station after years of being abandoned. So if it's possible there was an indoor portion, is it possible that the space later home to Thunder Run was a part of that? I think that's highly unlikely. The space Thunder Run occupies is located all the way on the other side of the mountain, meaning this indoor portion would have needed to be huge, which I simply don't think it was if it even existed at all. Even what we can see of the walkway looks like it was pretty long, so I think the added length would have been unnecessary. The only piece of evidence that I think does actually support the theory this was taken by a guest on the pathway is this other photo. This is a photo of the exit of Thunder Run on the park's opening day, 5 years before Thunder Run existed. This looks nothing like the 2 openings to walk behind the waterfall, or the washroom tunnel, which would have been the only other openings in the mountain back in 1981. This doesn't look like the entrance to an attraction, since there's no signage. However, this also doesn't look like an employees-only entrance. The path is wide, it looks wide open, and there's nothing to indicate that guests shouldn't go here. What this does look like is an exit to something, evidenced even more by this trash can right next to it. Since the Thunder Run space was originally planned to be the market, it makes sense this would have been its planned entrance. It would have made sense for the original layout of the walkway to dump you into this area or include an alternate path to it inside the mountain, which would have needed to then be repurposed after the market was cancelled. Wonderland would upload a vague behind-the-scenes sneak peek into the mountain on TikTok in 2022, briefly showing the base of the pillar Herman sits atop. While there is a small door behind the pillar, I believe this to be a maintenance door, and I doubt it's a remnant of a former attraction. I personally think it's more likely this tunnel led to a dead end, but wasn't hidden either since they planned to put an attraction there one day. The same TikTok sneak peek also showcased the haunt maze space in the basement, which does look more like parts of it could have been repurposed from something, but then again, this is located on the other side of the mountain from Thunder Run. Why do I think the pathway closed if it had nothing to do with displaced mechanical equipment, safety concerns, or a portion being replaced with Thunder Run? That answer is a lot less exciting. Remember that small path behind the waterfall I mentioned earlier? That would end up closing due to insurance reasons from the slippery ground caused by the mist of the waterfall. I think the pathway closed for exactly the same reason. With its trail-like nature, steep incline, and height, all playing factors in it being closed out of simply quelling insurance fears. That would also be why we've never got an official story from the park on this, as it's something that's not exactly easy to admit on a company's behalf. The second piece of evidence I'd like to present as to why I think the theory this was taken by a guest doesn't line up is because the dragon's eyes aren't lit. This implies the attraction was closed at the time this photo was taken, which is also when it would have been safe for a staff member to be inside the area of Thunder Run. I highly suspect a staff member took this picture sometime around or before the year 2000, even possibly in preparation for this version of Herman's removal. He also appears to be somewhat dusty and even a little bit damaged, implying he had been there already for a great number of years by the time this image was taken. So with a likely origin for this photo possibly unearthed, and a complete timeline of the changes made to both Herman and the Thunder Run ride experience, does that put this mystery to rest? Well, not exactly. It's possible that Herman may not have always been the only inhabitant of this mountain. Remember how I mentioned revisiting Wonderland as a teenager in the mid-2010s? One year I visited frequently was 2014, actually having a season's pass. I remember vividly riding Thunder Run that year and seeing a totally different dragon from Herman in the ride, one I didn't see the year before or the year after. I remember clear as day passing by a smaller, full-bodied dragon statue nestled among rocks and surrounded by glowing LED crystals. This was not something I saw just once. Especially back then, Thunder Run usually had a lower wait time as far as coasters go compared to the giants like Behemoth or Leviathan. This made it a great quick coaster, as despite its relatively low capacity due to only running one train, the ride is at least a relatively short experience, giving it a favorable capability of dispatching riders and keeping lines short back then. While this isn't really the case nowadays and this ride has become a bit notorious for its wait time, that's really only proof of how this ride has endured while the buzz for other attractions has come and gone. This means I rode Thunder Run at least a dozen times during the 2014 season, if not more, and remember this other dragon vividly. It was not located at the top of the pillar like Herman. Rather, it was located in a cutout cave inside the bottom of the pillar near the floor, on the opposite side of the pillar from where Herman faces. It was also fully illuminated for both passes through the mountain. I'm also not the only person online who remembers this. In fact, in this 2014 video, you can even see the multicolor lights shining out of the cave onto the track ahead. So why do I think the park did this? This was also the year that Wonder Mountain's Guardian opened, and the dragon looked nearly identical to the titular Guardian in that ride. I believe this was a tie-in to the new attraction, creating a synergy that the Guardian lives within the mountain. Herman's glowing eyes in crystal were nowhere to be seen in the darkness, and I believed he had been outright replaced. The next year, the short-lived optional VR experience was implemented on Thunder Run, and this mysterious other dragon was nowhere to be found. In fact, Herman's two glowing eyes were back. Now, I have desperately searched for information, photos, and footage of this other dragon, but I can't find it anywhere. But then I found this. These YouTube comments are from 2018. Now, I never visited the park that year, but it appears for a short while, perhaps not even the whole season, both dragons were visible, presumably Herman's eyes and the entirety of the other dragon in this cave. But it's this reply to the comment that I find much more fascinating. There have always been two. Is it possible that the original version of Thunder Run that existed prior to the replacement of the first Herman around the year 2000 contained not just the original Herman in all his glory, but also another dragon in this cave? The commenter here could have either not visited Wonderland since the change, or due to vivid memories of this, always had the keen eye to know where both dragons were in the darkness, even if just Herman was lit or neither of them were. Remember that sneak peek TikTok I mentioned Wonderland made earlier? It very briefly shows the edge of this cave, without peering inside it. The edge of the opening can also be seen in this 2008 video of when the floodlight effect still activated on Herman and better lit the room, proving it was there prior to when I saw it in 2014. This does not appear to be a cutout that was added later on. Judging by the shape and matching rock paneling, this cave appears to be built into the pillar and likely there since day one. I highly doubt the dragon I saw in 2014 was the original one that would have occupied this cave, as it looked identical to Wonder Mountain's guardian and seemed to have modern lighting effects. But I'm almost positive, based on the evidence that we have, that a second dragon separate from Herman originally occupied this cave. I think it had its effects shut off either when the more realistic Herman head went in around the year 2000, or when the floodlight effect was shut off and the original Herman head returned, as it would have been easier to hide this cave in the pitch darkness if its contents were already non-functioning or shut off by that point. In fact, the existence of the second dragon wanting to be hidden by the park because it was either out of date or removed could have been a contributing factor in the floodlight effect on Herman getting shut off in the first place, making the room more dark. Now, I can't definitively say if I remember anything being in this cave in the mid-2000s when I first wrote the version with Herman number 2. But in this 2008 video of that version of the ride, it doesn't appear like they're hiding this cave at all, although the video unfortunately doesn't show what's inside it. As for that Lights On Winterfest footage from 2023, it's hard to say because we don't really get a clear shot of it, but the cave appears to now be empty. The existence of the second dragon means the original version of the ride experience would have possibly had the glowing eyes of two dragons in the darkness on the first pass, with Herman obviously being the larger dragon, assumingly creating the thundering heartbeat. On the second pass, nearly the entire foggy room would have illuminated as crystals and floodlights lit up Herman as well as the dragon in the cave, and the roar sound effect played. This cave being down by the floor is even a little bit more proof that the theory this was once part of the pathway attraction may actually have some merit to it after all. Not to put on a tinfoil hat here or anything, but come to think of it, why would Herman be built from scratch as a half-body figure if you were supposed to see it initially from above like you do on Thunder Run, not from below like in this image? It's definitely something to think about. It was absolutely crazy to me when I first saw this photo and it dawned on me the absolutely massive and detailed prop that I had been whizzing by in the darkness all those years without even realizing it. But learning that there may have been a second, totally forgotten and abandoned one that was down in the cave all along before the one that resembled Guardian showed up is even crazier to me. I would even say it's a little tragic, considering even though we might find a photo or video of the dragon that was there in 2014 and again in 2018, we don't have any photos or footage that has surfaced, or likely ever will, of the original occupant of this cave. Despite Up in Fury's lack of physical theming, at least from what we can see in the previews, the ride's story is perhaps the first time in years that Herman has been acknowledged by the park, even if it's just in passing. The story of Up in Fury is a sled through Wonder Mountain that's been built by the inhabitants of the village surrounding it. In the story, the villagers once had winding paths up the mountain, but they were closed due to the presence of beasts. Not one beast, not just the Guardian. Beasts plural. This tongue-in-cheek story tells the literal story of the Wonder Mountain pathway and its closure due to Thunder Run. While a great piece of fan service, that's unfortunately where it ends, and the ride looks to have next to no theming aside from the pre-existing mountain, even inside the coaster's tunnel. I think Wonderland is sitting on a potential marketing goldmine here. The concerns of seeming outdated and funds being spent elsewhere in the park, and even elsewhere in the mountain, is preventing them from fully realizing. For a prop that's been essentially sitting in pitch darkness for 30 years, I realized while researching this video that Herman has a huge following online. While some guests simply call him the Dragon, and some by his name, and some guests remember both dragons and some just one, the fact that a prop the park has essentially buried, either intentionally or by lack of maintenance, has such a strong following online is kind of sad to me. Wonderland could be fully capitalizing on this. While many regional parks have mascot-like characters that develop based on their major coasters, Wonderland has always had a hard time finding one that stuck. The Behemoth character was briefly popular after the opening of that ride in 2008, but was eclipsed by the Leviathan character in 2012. There was a rush of merchandise for the Guardian character in 2014, but after that ride proved to be somewhat disappointing to most riders, the Leviathan character remained more popular. With the buzz around Leviathan dying down with all the additions that have come to the park in the 13 years since, it's left Wonderland pretty dependent on the branding of the Peanuts characters from a merchandise standpoint. With Herman, you have an established character whose following wasn't created through marketing or merchandise, but nearly 40 years of park fans themselves. This gives Wonderland a ride mascot that generations of guests will mutually recognize. I'm not saying he should be the park's mascot or anything, but this is definitely a marketable character from a merchandise standpoint that could also be used to tie into both Elpin Fury and a refurbished version of Thunder Run that the park could advertise to drive attendance. You have people who rode Thunder Run in the 80s and 90s literally begging Wonderland in the comment sections of the park's social media posts for Herman's original effects to be fixed, and a whole new generation who have only caught dark glimpses of him and want to see more. I think sometimes major theme parks lose sight of the fact that a prop doesn't have to be the most advanced or up-to-date to still engage guests, especially if it has a history and nostalgia connection to riders. Just take a look at the beloved singing mushrooms at King's Dominion that were there until the early 90s, removed, and then brought back by popular demand for the park's 40th anniversary in 2014. If these were replaced with a more advanced version, they definitely wouldn't have the same connection to guests. I don't think Herman and the Cave Dragon need to be replaced with state-of-the-art fog-breathing animatronics. Rather, I think that would take away from the ride experience. I think the Thunder Run Dragons in their original form are exactly as effective as they need to be, offering a suspense-building reveal for new riders and a burst of nostalgia for longtime park guests. Thank you for watching. Do you have memories of Thunder Run or even the Wonder Mountain Pathway? If so, please share them, as hearing the first-hand accounts and memories of those who were there has always been the greatest and most powerful historical research tool in the creation of my website and channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and most of all, share, so hopefully we can get to the bottom of Wonder Mountain's many wonders, and make sure Herman's full story finally gets to be told. Update. This video was already recorded, produced, edited, and announced when Wonderland uploaded these photos to their Instagram of Thunder Run with the lights on. We got several different angles of the attraction, including this. There he is, and these photos confirm so much of what you just heard in this video. This is clearly the original Herman, repainted green, and also clearly not the one with the white eyebrow scales and teeth on the side that was there in the middle in the 2000s. We also get a great shot of the cave around the back of the rock pillar, and I find it very interesting that once again, despite getting all these other behind-the-scenes photos, Wonderland has opted not to show us what lurks inside it, or lack thereof. With how themed this area is for a room they keep essentially pitch black nowadays, we can really see how immersive these props and rock panels would have made this ride with dynamic fog and lighting effects. And by the way, the paint job on Herman looks almost a little too good, almost as if he was just repainted for the 2025 season. Look at this compared to how he looked in 2023. The park has also actively gone out of their way to keep all of this hidden for the better part of 3 decades now, so this is a very good sign. Not to dive into speculation and wishful thinking here, but this could possibly mean that we are going to see a Thunder Run refurbishment in 2025. We can only hope that Wonderland has finally heard the love that fans have for this ride, and just like me making this video, felt that the buzz around Elpin Fury was the perfect time to once again shine some light on Thunder Run.